Hello everyone, during my previous video, I showed you how to solve quadratic equations by the use of completing the square method, and we even derived the quadratic formula by the use of completing the square method. Today we are going to check out some examples and then we can solve those quadratic equations by the use of completing the square method. Now starting with example number 1. We have 6x squared plus 7x plus 2 is equals to 0. We said the first thing when you are solving quadratic equations by the use of completing the square method, always remember the very first thing, that the coefficient of x squared should be equal to 1. But in our case, the coefficient of x squared is not 1, but rather it's 6. What do we do to make it 1? We have to divide everything by 6. So we have to divide by 6. There we divide by 6, we divide by 6, and we divide by 6. So the 6 cancels, and then here we'll have x squared plus 7 over 6x plus 1 over 3 is equals to 0. That's the first step. The second step is to make sure that on your left hand side you are only left with the terms which have x's with themselves. The rest, take it to the right hand side. So we have to be left with only this. We have x here and we have x here. So we have to take a third to the other side of the equal sign. So here we'll be left with x squared plus 7 over 6x is equals to, when we take a third to the other side, the sign, positive sign, changes to a negative sign. So there we'll have minus 1 over 3. That's the second step. The first step, make sure the coefficient of x squared is 1. Step number 2, make sure that on your left hand side you only have the terms where you can see x. Step number 3 is to add now the third term. Remember, the third step is now to add the third term on our left hand side. If you check at our left hand side, we only have two terms now, x squared and 7 over 6x. So we have to add the third term, and what we are going to add, we have still to add it on the other side. But how are we going to know what we are supposed to add? We said that the third term you're supposed to take b all over 2 squared, and b all over 2 you should get it from, let's say for example, our standard quadratic expression or equation is normally ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So this is the b. The value for b, even if it's a fraction, you have to take all of it. Take all of it, divide by 2, and then you square. So in our case, our value for b is 7 over 6. So for instance, let's first calculate what we are going to add. Maybe our b is 7 over 6. We have to divide by 2 and then we square. Okay, this is the same as 7 over 6 divided by 2 all over 1, and then we have to square. And this is the same as 7 over 6 multiplied by 1 over 2, and then we square. And this is the same as 7 all over 12, and then you square. Okay, all right, so it's going to look like this. We have x squared plus 7 all over 6x plus 7 all over 12 squared is equals to minus 1 over 3, and then we plus 7 all over 12 squared. That's the third step. And then now the fourth step is to, after you get to here, we said we have to ignore this term, we have to ignore this, and we'll be left with this and this. When you check the two of them, they have something in common. They have squares. We have x as a square, 7 over 12 as a square. So you combine the two and then you put them under the same square. We'll have x plus 7 over 12, and then under the same square is equals to minus a third plus, what is 7 over 12 squared? Should be 49 all over 140. right? Okay, this is 7 over 12 squared is equals to, what is the LCM of 3 and 144? Should be 144 divided by 3, that should be 48, multiplied by -1, it's negative 48, then plus 49. This is x plus 7 over 12 squared is equals to 1 over 44. We need to get the value of x, and therefore we have to get the square root of both sides. We have to get the square root here, and we have to get the square root there. The square root here, we get 7 over 12 is equals to plus or minus 1 all over 12, right? Okay, so we have x plus 7 over 12 is equals to plus or minus 1 over 12. And then from here we can get the two values of x. X is equals to plus or minus 1 over 12. We take 7 over 12 the other side and becomes minus 7 over 12. Therefore our x1 is equals to 1 over 12 with the positive sign minus 7 over 12. This is equals to negative 6 over 12, and that is negative 1 over 2 x1. X2 is equals to, now the 1 over 12 with the negative sign, minus 7 over 12. This is equals to negative 8 over 12, and this is the same as negative 2 all over 3. And you are done with example number 1. Let's go to example number 2. Example number 2, we have x squared, example number 2, we have x squared minus 6x minus 7 is equals to 0. Just the same way, the first step is to check the coefficient of x squared. Is it 1? Yes or no? If it's 1, then you can proceed to step number 2. But if it's not 1, then you have to divide everything by that coefficient. But fortunately, the coefficient for x squared is 1, as you can see. So now we proceed to step number 2. Step number 2 is to take the constant to the other side, and we remain with the terms which have x. So here we left with x squared minus 6x is equals to 7, positive, because it's already minus. When it crosses over the equal sign, it changes to positive. Then step number 3, we have to add the third term. This is how it should be, minus 6x plus, what is the third term? The value of b, 6 all over 2, and then we square is equals to 7. 7 plus 6 over 2 squared, right? Okay, this is x squared minus 6x plus 3 squared is equals to 7 plus 3 squared. We put them under the same brackets. We have x. This x, which sign should it go with? Is it this plus or this minus? Should be this minus. So always when you are getting to this step now, always you have to be keen, because the x has to take the sign which is here. If it's positive, it's okay. If it's negative, then you put a negative sign. So we have a negative, and then 3 into square is equals to 7 plus 9, right? Okay, this is x plus 3 squared is equals to 16. The next step is to get the square root of both sides. And then we have x plus 3 is equals to plus or minus 4. Please don't forget, the square root of any positive number is either plus or minus. So we have x minus 3 is equals to plus or minus 4. Therefore, our x1 is equals to plus 4 plus 3 is equals to 7, or x2 is equals to minus 4 plus 3 is equals to negative 1. You're done with example number 2. Let's go to example number 3. Example number 3, we have x squared plus 5x plus 6 is equals to 0. Just the same way, the first step, what is the coefficient of x squared? Is it 1 or not? It's 1. Then you can proceed to step number 2. If it's not 1, then you have to divide everything by that coefficient. But fortunately, it's 1. So we have to proceed to step number 2. And step number 2 is to make sure that our left-hand side we can only see the things which have x. The others go to the other side. So we have to take the 6 constant to the other side. And then we'll have x squared plus 5x is equals to minus 6. Why is it a minus? Because it had to cross over the equal sign. So the positive sign changes to minus. Now the third step, we have to introduce the third term. And this one is based on our value of b. And our value of b, we are fortunate that it's a whole number, which is 5. So we have to get b all over 2 squared, not that. So we have x squared plus 5x plus the value for b is 5 all over 2 squared. And this one we have to add it both sides, right? Okay, equals to minus 6 plus 5 all over 2 squared. Then you take those ones, ignore the 5x. We have x plus 5 all over 2 squared. We say this x takes the sign which is here, whether it's positive or minus. In this case, it's a positive sign. If it was a negative, then we would be having a negative sign here, right? Okay, is equals to minus 6 plus 25 all over 4. I hope you can understand where 25 is coming from and 4 is coming from. It's the square of 5 and 4. So we have x plus 5 all over 2 squared is equals to, the LCM is 4. We can put that 1 over 1 so that it can be easy to get the sum of the two. So the LCM is 4. Here we'll have negative 24 and then plus 25. Okay? Alright. Then we have x plus 5 all over 2 squared is equals to minus 24 plus 25 over 4. This is the same as is equals to 1 over 4. Minus 24 plus 25, it's 1, and then you have the 4. And from there is to get the square root both sides. We'll have x plus 5 over 2, which is equals to plus or minus 1 over 2. The square root of 1 is 1, the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root, please don't forget the plus and minus, because if you forget the minus, then you will only have one value for x. And the square root of any positive number is either a plus or minus, because, for instance, if you had something like 2 and you square it, you will get 4. If you had negative 2 and you square it, you still get 4. That's why the square root of any positive number, this is a positive number, 4 is a positive number, 4 is a positive number. So the square root of any positive number gives you an answer which is either positive or negative. So don't forget about those two signs. Right? Okay. Now let's get the two values of x. So we have x plus 5 over 2 is equals to plus or minus 1 over 2. X is equals to plus or minus a half minus 5 over 2. Our x1 is equals to, let's start with plus 1 over 2 minus 5 over 2 is equals to negative 4 over 2. And that is the same as negative 2. Then x2 is equals to minus 1 over 2 minus 5 over 2. This is equals to negative 6 over 2, and this is the same as negative 3. And you are done with example number 3. Let's proceed to example number 4. So in example number 4, we have 2x squared minus 9x plus 9 is equals to 0. Just the same usual steps. when solving the quadratic equations using completing the square method. Step number 1, check the coefficient of x squared. Is it 1 or not? It's not 1. The coefficient of x squared is 2, and therefore we have to divide everything by that coefficient because we have to make it 1. So that one cancels with that, and then we have our x squared minus 9 over 2x plus 9 over 2 is equals to 0. That's step number 1. Step number 2, we have to be left with only this. The constant goes to the other side. So we'll be left with x squared minus 9 all over 2x is equals to negative 9 over 2. Step number 3, introduce the third term, x squared. I hope you can guess what is the third term already. Minus 9 all over 2x plus 9 over 4 squared is equals to minus 9 over 2 plus 9 over 4 squared. Do you know where the 9 over 4 is coming from? It's coming from b over 2 squared, and b is 9 over 2, and you have to divide it by 2. If you do that, you will get 9 over 4, and then you have the square. Alright, then ignore this term and combine this with this. Don't forget this sign. Whether it's plus or minus, don't forget it. So here we have x minus 9 over 4 squared is equals to minus 9 over 2 plus 81 over 1 over 6. Right? Hope we are together up to there. Okay, next we have x minus 9 over 4 squared is equals to minus 9 over 2 plus 81 over 1, 6. This is same as x minus 9 over 4 squared is equals to, the LCM is 16 divided by 2, it's 8, multiplied by minus 9, it's negative 72, then plus 81. This is x minus 9 over 4 squared is equals to 9 over 16. Get the square root of both sides. Minus 9 over 4 is equals to plus or minus 3 over 4. Okay, x is equals to plus or minus 3 over 4 plus 9 over 4, right? Okay, so this is x is equals to plus or minus 3 over 4 plus 9 over 4, or x1 is equals to 3 over 4 plus 9 over 4. This is the same as 12 over 4, and the answer is 3. While x2 is negative 3 over 4 plus 9 over 4 is equals to 6 over 4, and this is the same as 3 over 2, which is the same as 1 and 1 over 2. So x1 is 3, while x2 is equals to 1 and a half. Alright, that's the end of our today's session. Till next time, bye.